gun, get your gun, get your gun. Take it on the run, on the run, on the run. Hear them calling you and me, every son of liberty. Hurry right away, no delay, go today. Make your daddy glad to have had such a lad.
Where in all history, sacred or secular, and where in all this wide land is there any evidence of greater patriotism than was shown by Stark County, Ohio? The Massillon Museum preserves hundreds of stories through audio interviews, in scrapbooks, on the pages of diaries, through letters, and inside memoirs. The following are just some of the stories of World War I, shared by Massillonians from a variety of viewpoints about their experience during the Great War. In 1914, Austria-Hungary controlled the country of Serbia with an iron fist. The events of the First World War were set in motion by Serbian Gavrilo Princip assassinating Austria-Hungary's heir, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and his wife, on June 28, 1914. As a result, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, which set off a series of diplomatic alliances that would engulf Europe in war very rapidly.
As for Austria-Hungary, she was willing to take the chance that Russia would stand aside and permit Serbia to be destroyed. But still, so they all said, they did not want war. The question of war guilt will be discussed for years to come. To me, it seems less important to try to fix the blame than to remember that the great decisions were made by two uncontrolled men, the emperors of Germany and Austria-Hungary. In the quiet of their studies, the one decided that the moment had come when Serbia should be humiliated, and the other wrote that Vienna could count on Germany's support.
Native Macedonian Robert Pete Skinner served as the United States Consul General in London during the Great War.
Public feeling became much more tense as my first week in London advanced. The English began to interrupt their holidays. Mr. Ballin and all the prominent Germans rushed back to Germany. Americans on the continent began to pour in, filling up the fashionable hotels. At the Consulate General, anxious Americans came in crowds to be assured that whatever might happen, they would be able to get home.
For Americans, most believed that the war had nothing to do with them. On May 7, 1915, the passenger ship Lusitania was sunk by German U-boats, which killed 128 Americans on board. Even after a public outcry, President Wilson kept us out of war and was reelected in 1916 under that slogan. In early 1917, the famous Zimmermann telegram was intercepted from a German ambassador, which invited Mexico to join the war, to attack the United States, and would be rewarded with the territories it lost during the Mexican War. America had tried to stay out of the war, but it had finally reached the border. On April 6, 1917, President Woodrow Wilson asked Congress to declare war on Germany and its allies. Passage of the Selective Service Act on May 18, 1917, drafted 2.8 million men, and another 2 million men volunteered. 20,000 women served in Army and Navy nurse corps. 1,000 men from Massillon served in the conflict.
It was early morning on the 30th day of April, 1918. After saying goodbye to my neighbor friends and the folks at home, I was ready to leave for a 9 o'clock appointment at the local draft board in the City Hall building. From City Hall draft board, we had a 4-block hike to the Pennsylvania Railroad depot, where we boarded a troop train en route to Camp Sherman. Military discipline prevailed throughout the camp. The construction of the barracks, the camp's receiving station, the large mess hall, the laundry, and many other buildings were very modern in construction, with very little greenery that surrounded these buildings.
Stark County units that served included Alliance's Company K of the 146th Infantry, Massillon, Company K of the 10th Ohio Infantry, which later incorporated into Company A of the 136th Machine Gun Battalion, Canton, the 145th Ambulance Company, and general soldiers from Stark County, making up the 332nd Infantry. A total of 17 Massillon men were killed in the Great War. Although Massillon's own regiment became Company A of the 136th Regiment of Machine Gunners, they were and still are referred to as their originally assigned group, Company K. Charles Bud Yost was just 9 years old when America entered the war. His memories, recorded in 1983, provide perspective from the home front of Massillon, Ohio.
Company K was located in what we used to call a gymnasium. It belonged to the Board of Education and had been used for a number of years as a gymnasium for the high school until Washington High School was built. It had on the second floor for basketball. Down underneath they had a swimming pool. When Company K took it over, the swimming pool was covered over. That floor was used for the mess hall. We often went down and stood around at the gymnasium, listening to what the men said, watching everything that was going on. We were a real nosy group. We saw these men daily because they would march and drill up and down North Street. They were sent to a camp, I believe, in the South to become machine gunners. And this was supposed to have come about because of the excellent training that they had had in Massillon.
Company K served in the Meuse-Argonne campaign in September of 1918 and held Saint-Mihiel, France for 10 days.
We weren't organized. We weren't trained of what was going on. And the uniforms we had, they weren't suitable.
On June 12th at 9:30 a.m., we boarded a troop train that took us into New York City Pier number 57, where we boarded an English ship called the Leicestershire. During the night, several U.S. battleship destroyers cruised to the right and one to the left of our convoy of 12 ships on guard duty for the fleet while crossing the Atlantic.
Several passengers decided that with so many submarines about, they would wear night and day newly invented rubber life-saving suits under their outer clothing, suits which could be inflated quickly through a tube conveniently at hand.
They don't realize that you're hungry. Didn't have my shoes off for 2 weeks. Socks were all disintegrated and just all like mud right in my feet, see.
Some of the boys complained about what they called cooties, which were the same as our body lice, and which were very irritating but hard to get rid of when they were in the trenches and were not able to have a change of clothing.
What did we do for washhouses and bathrooms out? I said, well, we shared them with the horses. The civilians it's hard to believe that you can go 2-3 weeks without changing your clothes, isn't it?
Fully equipped, we went on a regimental hike with all material, left camp at 5:30 a.m., and returned to camp late in the afternoon all tired out. Who cares? Nobody but yourself.
They were spread all along there on an old road that went through the forest, cleaning that off so the French artillery could advance, get through there. Before they were pulling them through there, 3 teams on the gun and 4 on the caisson. We donated 40 men with ropes to pull, and they dragged those cannons through the mire to get them up. And all the time, the Germans are taking pot shots at us.
Miles Hay wanted a choice, so he volunteered for the Marines.
The night before the St. Mihiel Drive, we got off the train, and that's where we joined up with the 6th Regiment, where we placed men that had been killed or wounded. The field was full of haystacks. We wondered what they was making hay for there, because it was in the war zone, but well, these haystacks was ammunition for the 45s, and they had them covered with hay. And at midnight that night, they had two 14-inch guns mounted on railroad cars, and at midnight they opened up, and all along the line then till the next morning at daylight, there was 1 million shells fired. That was the barrage. Everything on the road was just shot to pieces.
This being our first day up front where the action was, we all had guns placed in a firing position. It was a scary night for all of us, with sirens blowing and gas alarms being sounded. Most all of us were tense until we received an all-clear sign to remove gas masks. A soldier never knows what may happen next in a battle zone.
The next morning, we went over the top. There's a little town that used to be called Flurry, but there was nothing left of it but the walls, some of the old brick houses. The rest of it is all burned out. We hadn't gone over 50 or 100 yards until the shell fell amongst the officers. It was at the front of the line, and the sliver of the shell cut the throat of our captain, so he bled to death. Then it wasn't long till along come an airplane. This was what they called a flying circus. He was shooting at us. The machine gunner was sitting back of the pilot, and he was shooting at us. I thought, well, I'm going to put a couple into his tank, maybe we can knock him down. So I shot a clip into the tank, but I didn't have the right kind of bullets. It's a good thing that I went to the French restroom, because the American field hospital was down by the depot, and that night there was a dirigible come over and dropped a bomb on it. 200 and some of them were killed, doctors, nurses, and patients.
Massillon native Jesse Matthews volunteered for the Army's Air Service, hoping to get into flight school and see the world. When he arrived at a training camp, he was assigned to lead the fire department, and he would remain at the camp for the remainder of the war.
Well, there's 3 fellows in Massillon here, one of them, that was interested in flying. So we decided to go to Canton and ask the recruiting officer over there what our chances were to fly. He said, pretty good right now. So we said, well, sign us up. I went because I was young and wanted experience.
Our battery of guns being located near the Meuse Canal, we received our ammunition by boats. During our evening meal, we saw over 130 Allied planes flying overhead. Up over the hill from our gun's firing position, we saw 2 of our gas balloons, who were giving our officers the range and firing data for our 4 howitzers. One balloon came down to earth on fire. A daredevil German ace pilot did the shooting. 2 of our U.S. balloonists escaped by using parachutes.
Everyone was very much involved. People were knitting a great deal. They were making knitted headpieces like you might wear to go skiing for the boys. My mother had a needlework shop. and she was selling a lot of yarn and was teaching a lot of people to knit. I even tried it myself for a while, but I gave up and decided that maybe I could do something else for the cause a lot better.
December 9th, 1914. As I walked through Kensington Gardens this morning, I saw false alleys of lights, the position of which is said to be changed every day. This is done to throw German airplanes off the scent and make the pilots believe that Hyde Park is somewhere near Notting Hill, a region that is not lighted at all. But so far, the German airplanes have not come, nor the famous Zeppelins either. October 5th, 1916. The streets are inky black these nights, and in crossing Knightsbridge, Robert had been struck by a taxicab and picked up with bruises and a badly sprained right ankle.
The population of London became more and more nervous as the raids continued. Trains to the suburbs were crowded every night. Thousands of poor people assembled near the tube station entrances, bringing their babies, food, and blankets, ready to dive in when the warning maroons were heard. When these ominous sounds rose over the traffic of the city, police cars dashed here and there with their illuminated notices, "Take cover!" and in the darkness the searchlights played across the heavens, seeking the enemy.
October 29th, 1916. The real raid began later, and the noise was thunderous. Following my usual practice, I gathered up the dog and took refuge under the piano as perhaps the safest place if the house should collapse. Everybody tells me that, next to the piano, the surest place for refuge is within a doorway, as experience shows that when houses collapse, the doorways usually remain intact. The Zeppelins probably will come no more, as the losses have been too heavy to make such raids profitable. I must say that the Zeppelin raids are much less terrifying than plane raids, as the airships make little noise. January 29th, 1918. We dine early, usually at 6 o'clock on account of the raids, and go to bed correspondingly early. Tonight, we had settled in at 9 o'clock when a raid began, and the all clear signal was not sounded until 2 a.m.
Propaganda was churned out by George Creel and his government-sanctioned Committee on Public Information. Their goal was to get America invested in the conflict. These images and phrases tug at the heartstrings, encourage men to join the military, encourage those at home to support the war, encourage the purchase of war bonds, and also use scare tactics.
All this time, people were buying war bonds, there were parades, all kinds of affairs to sell war bonds. All the time we had certain propaganda from the Allies. This was for the purpose of keeping up our interest and helping them out. I think that after the war we found out that some of those things that they said were being done to our allies by the Germans were somewhat exaggerated. One time at the Massillon State Hospital, there was a whole building for ex-soldiers who had received shell shock and had become mental cases as a result.
It was 6 years that I was out of circulation. I didn't know how the civilians acted.
German names became unpopular. The royal family set the fashion by ceasing to be the House of Hanover and became the House of Windsor. People in private life of German origin exchanged their German names for English names. We had one on our staff, Otto Hergenroder. When reporting for duty one morning, Otto announced that he was now Charles Harcourt.
The town of New Berlin changed its name to North Canton. We didn't ask for hamburger steak at the meat market anymore because of that particular German name. And for a while, when I would go to the meat market, I would ask for Liberty steak. As you know, there were many songs written about the war. You still hear some of them. One that was quite serious was Keep the Home Fires Burning, which was sung in meetings and so forth in a very determined and serious manner.
As the soldiers pass along, and although your heart is breaking, make it sing this cheery song. Keep the home fires burning while your hearts are yearning, though your lads are far away, they dream of home. There's a silver lining through the dark cloud shining. Turn the dark cloud inside out till the boys come home.
When the moon shines over the cowshed, I'll be waiting at the kitchen door.
Katie, beautiful Katie, you're the only girl that I adore. When the moon shines over the cowshed,
While some of the other songs were of somewhat comical nature.
Jimmy thought he'd like to take a chance, see if he could make the Kaiser dance, stepping to a tune all about the silvery moon. This is what they hear in far-off France. Katie, how you gonna keep them down on the farm of the St. Paris? How you gonna keep them from Piccadilly, dancing around and painting the town? How you gonna keep them away from harm? That's the mystery. They never want to see a rainbow flower, and fool the Jews can parlez-vous a cow. How you gonna keep them?
And then, of course, there was Over There, Goodbye Broadway, Hello France, any number of songs that made fun of the Kaiser, and most of them were of the vein that all that has to be done is for our boys to get over there, and that would mean the end of the war. We were going to do what President Wilson was determined to do, and that was to save the world for democracy.
It's a long way to Tipperary. It's a long way to go.
Influenza swept through the world in a pandemic that could only be compared to the Black Death in the 1300s, which killed between 30 and 60% of Europe's population at that time. Influenza was incubated after exposure, as men stayed in close and swampy trenches with improper hygiene and food. And transatlantic travel carried it near and far. More than 50 million people worldwide were infected, including 700 cases in Massillon. Massillon professional and high school football games were canceled. The Board of Health closed schools, churches, theaters, and bars to avoid the spread.
A lot of people died of that flu. The biggest man on the field, he worked for me as a fireman. He died first of all the rest.
But they didn't know what it was. They were panicked.
And they didn't know how to treat me when I had the flu.
Oh, truckloads of them.
Yeah.
Every morning, the rough boxes would go out. Yeah, that was the worst epidemic.
I'm sorry to have to state that the gymnasium where Company K stayed the following year, in 1918, during the flu epidemic, it became a morgue. So many people were passing away from the influenza that the funeral homes were unable to take care of the large number.
Mrs. Whitelaw Reed, with indomitable energy and remarkable administrative capacity, succeeded in starting a Red Cross organization which was working successfully long before the more official Red Cross people arrived, whereupon the two groups joined forces. One of the most human of the activities which began at this time was the Red Cross Care Committee, to which hundreds of women belonged, including chairwoman of the committee, Nell Wales Skinner, by the way. Women who fought down homesickness with apple pie and donuts, wrote letters for the helpless, attended funerals, sent parcels of comforts to the front, and did 1,000 other little things besides.
June 13th, 1917. We are in touch with 100 visitors, all American ladies, who go systematically through hospitals to find if there are any American sailors and soldiers undergoing treatment. They write letters for them, try to brighten their existence with such small comforts as are available. The appetite of our soldiers and sailors for peanut brittle is something formidable.
The Massillon chapter of the Red Cross had 19,492 registered workers from 1917 to 1919. These ladies worked to assist the war effort and made 110,000 gauze dressings, 3,200 sweaters, and 3,913 pairs of socks.
You can believe that everybody was very joyful when the war ended. A young man came up the street yelling, "Extra, extra, the war is over, the armistice has been signed."
November 11th. After 50 shells were fired during early morning into German territory, Battery F received orders from headquarters to cease firing at 10:25 a.m., shortly after the good news eventually came when our Captain Tom McCaw informed us that an armistice was signed for peace by the Germans. Everyone was happy and rejoicing to know that the war had finally ended. During the balance of the day, bonfires were lighted, rocket and star shells were flying everywhere throughout the night, celebrating the occasion.
Over there, send the word over there, that the Yanks are coming, the drums rum-tumming everywhere, so prepare, say a prayer, send the word to beware, we'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over, over there, over there, over there. Send the word over there, that the Yanks are coming.